good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world. One quiet thought at a time, as we wrap up Friday, 27th June, 2025. Let's see what stories are unfolding around us. The United States and China have reached an agreement to de-escalate trade tensions, with President Trump stating that a trade deal with China has been signed and anticipating a deal with India soon. This progress, along with hopes for a U.S. Federal Reserve rate cut, has propelled the U.S. stock market to record highs. The S&P 500 closed at 6,173, and the Nasdaq reached 20,273. The Dow Jones also experienced gains, with stocks reaching 52-week highs versus lows. Investor sentiment is positive, with attention focused on upcoming U.S. jobs data. However, the business for zero-day exploits in the U.S. is reportedly broken, and there are warning signs of weak job creation. Despite these concerns, American equities opened higher, as the U.S. claimed the upper hand in Iran strikes. The U.S. dollar had its worst first-half performance in nearly 40 years. Metals generally rose, with airline copper up over 2% this week. Oil prices plummeted on a weekly basis. The U.S. oil and gas rig count has fallen for the fourth consecutive month, reaching an October 2021 low, according to Baker Hughes. A report indicates the recent decline in the U.S. dollar's value is driven by capital moving away from U.S. assets, not just interest rate changes. President Trump and his family are now involved in the crypto industry, including memcoins, a stablecoin, a Bitcoin mining operation, and a crypto financial services company, despite his previous disinterest in cryptocurrency. South Korea is calling for a mutually beneficial trade deal with the U.S. Advent-backed NIC entered the U.S. IPO lineup as listings pick up pace. Following the news from the U.S., China is also experiencing shifts in its economic landscape. The U.S. and China have reached an agreement to de-escalate trade tensions, with President Trump stating that a trade deal with China has been signed. Progress in the China-U.S. trade deal has contributed to mostly higher global shares. However, U.S. tariffs are negatively impacting China's solar firms, as reflected by a gloomy market mood at the SNEC PV conference. Several leading companies opted out of the conference due to tight budgets, and CEOs from major producers did not attend as keynote speakers. Globally, shares are mostly higher, due to the Israel-Iran ceasefire and progress in a China-U.S. trade deal. Foreign policy experts suggest the Trump administration's actions are ceding global influence to rivals like China and Russia. Elsewhere around the world, in Bolivia, cryptocurrency transactions have increased by over 530% due to currency issues. India is on the cusp of a potential trade agreement, as President Trump anticipates a deal with India soon. Japan's Nikkei closed up 566.21 points, breaking through 40,000, supported by easing concerns over U.S. tariffs. European stocks are experiencing their best week in 6 weeks due to trade optimism with the U.S. Gemini launches tokenized US stock trading in EU, starting with Mr. O. Canada experienced terminated trade talks with the U.S. despite US stocks ending up with S&P 500 and Nasdaq records. Iran's top diplomat says talks with us complicated by American strike on nuclear sites. China's industrial profits have taken a significant hit, plunging by 9.1%, the steepest fall in 7 months, fueled by weak household consumption and global uncertainty. At the World Economic Forum in Tianjin, the challenges were apparent, yet China is still viewed as a bright spot amid global economic instability. Guangdong Province plans to launch a domestic trade version of the Canton Fair to bolster domestic trade due to weak external demand. confirming details of a trade deal initially announced by the U.S. China will review export applications for controlled items while the U.S. eases some restrictions. Missile bombardments are threatening key shipping routes in the Middle East, particularly impacting Chinese exporters who rely on trade with Iran. China continues to purchase Iranian oil via shadow supply chain despite U.S. sanctions. Domestically, Honor is moving towards an onshore share listing, while Shine is reportedly planning a confidential Hong Kong IPO. Cattle, a Tesla supplier, is expanding globally, and LZ Tora is facilitating entry into the Chinese market. Huawei's new laptop is being viewed as evidence of how America's China ban is hurting one of the companies. Turning to the United States, the confirmed details of the trade deal with China involve easing restrictions on both sides. Ford has been forced to idle multiple U.S. plants due to a shortage of magnets from China. Wall Street is experiencing rallies, spurred by the China trade deal news and expectations of rate cuts. Nvidia shares have risen for a fifth consecutive day, hovering near fresh highs as investors shake off China concerns. Iran finds itself at the center of escalating tensions as missile bombardments threaten key shipping routes in the Middle East. Despite U.S. sanctions, China continues to be a top buyer of Iranian oil, utilizing a shadow supply chain of transshipment. Lastly, Vietnam's Prime Minister recently visited Asia's largest stock exchange in China, signaling deepening economic ties. India's stock market is surging, approaching all-time highs amid strong domestic demand and supportive government policies. The Nifty 50 has been on a four-session winning streak as of June 27th, with Sensex rising 303 points and Nifty 50 up 89 points, boosting investor wealth by audit 12 lakh crore. Easing Middle East tensions and declining crude oil prices have fueled this rally, resulting in over 2% weekly gains for both indices. Concerns about tariff issues and inflation, however, remain. Projections suggest an 8% gain for the Indian stock market in the first half of calendar year 2025. The IPO market in India is vibrant, with 24 IPOs raising 9,500 crore in June, predominantly from the SIM sector, 75%, and the main board segment, 25%. The HDB Financial IPO has become the second most subscribed 10,000 crore plus offering, driven by high demand from wealthy investors. India's GDP is expected to grow at 6.2% in 2026, with inflation hovering around 4%. JSW is planning a $468 million debt sale to finance the AXO deal. The country is also anticipating another record rice crop, with its rice bins already full. In trade, India has imposed anti-dumping duties ranging from 27% to 63% on goods, including plastic processing machines from China and Taiwan, citing material injury. The government is also addressing rare earth supply concerns and formulating rules for strategic Chinese investment. As of May, Indian coal imports from Russia have reached a 2-year high. India also grapples with balancing technological progress and societal readiness, particularly regarding cryptocurrency and financial literacy, while also navigating concerns around digital authoritarianism. A legal complexity exists concerning transgender identity, certificates, and PAN card recognition. Regarding international relations, India is actively urging China to demarcate their disputed Himalayan border. In other news, Russia has delayed deliveries of the S-400 missile system to India. Despite this setback, discussions between the two countries continue regarding the supply of missile systems and upgrades to fighter jets. Canada faces renewed trade tensions with the United States as President Trump abruptly ended all trade negotiations, decrying Canada's digital services tax as a copycat of European Union policies. This action sent ripples through Canadian markets, causing the Tariffs to dip and the loonie to weaken, while the benchmark yield also experienced a downturn, despite an earlier proposed deadline of July 8 for trade agreements with the U.S. Trump has signaled a willingness to extend this timeline. The Canadian economy also saw a contraction in April, marked by widespread declines in the manufacturing sector. Even with these economic headwinds, the TSX had previously reached a record high, driven by investor evaluations of economic data. It is important to note that Canada's digital services tax is still in effect, despite the recent G7 agreement. United Kingdom governance is currently navigating economic headwinds. The UK auto industry suffered a major setback in May, recording its lowest production figures since 1949. Model transitions, restructuring, and tariff effects are blamed. Simultaneously, the UK stock market is demonstrating resilience despite global economic instability, joining in a worldwide upswing, fueled by positive trade and interest rate projections. The FTSE 100 and FTSE dividend stocks are considered stable elements within the UK equity landscape. Lion Finance Group, plc, executed shares on the FTSE AIM UK 50 index. Calls are mounting to tackle the UK's investment challenges to boost market activity. The London Stock Exchange believes the UK is still awaiting tangible results from recent market reforms. The UK's financial regulator has initiated an investigation into Wood Group. The Smarter Web company, a UK-based firm, secured $56 million in funding shortly after a substantial Bitcoin acquisition. Doubts linger about the valuation of UK small-cap shares, despite the FTSE 100's gains. The UK is exploring ways to lessen the impact of trading book capital regulations on banks. European markets surged, fueled by growing anticipation of trade pacts between the European Union and the United States, coupled with a reduction in US-China trade friction. European stocks recorded their most substantial weekly increase since mid-May. Barclays and Deutsche Bank shares both reached decade-high closing prices, reflecting the positive market sentiment. Inflation saw a rise in France and Spain, even as European equities closed higher in Friday trading. Shell executed a strategic share acquisition across several European markets. Across the Atlantic, the United States saw the S&P 500 achieve a new peak, mirroring the bullish trend in Europe. Auto stocks experienced a significant increase as part of the general market rally. The positive market movement was further bolstered by the improved outlook on international trade relations. Germany's workers are set to see a boost as the minimum wage increases by about 14% in the next year and a half. Shifting gears to technology, Germany has asked Apple and Google to ban the Chinese AI app DeepSeek due to its illegal status. Economically, Germany is striving for €30 billion each year in venture capital investments. Observers are also noting that migration trends may be a contrarian indicator for real estate and infrastructure stocks there. Turning to Russia, Moscow has called in the German ambassador. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss what Russia claims is the persecution of Russian media in Germany. Japan's stock market is experiencing a resurgence, with the Nikkei index exceeding 40,000 for the first time in months. This surge reflects a positive shift in investor sentiment, fueled by hopes for improved trade relations and a generally optimistic outlook mirroring Wall Street's performance. Domestically, Japan carried out the execution of a man convicted of multiple murders, ending a period without capital punishment. Economic indicators reveal that while inflation in Tokyo has moderated, it remains above the central bank's desired threshold. In international affairs, Japan is strategically enhancing its investments in African nations, seeking to establish a stronger presence in the region amid growing competition with China. Brazil is collaborating with Starlink to curb illegal activities in the Amazon. The Federal Prosecutor's Office seeks to limit Starlink's use by minors and criminals. This partnership aims to disrupt communications used for illicit operations. The United States is navigating complex trade negotiations, with President Trump signaling impending deals with various countries while maintaining the possibility of tariffs beyond July for some. A computer malfunction at American Airlines caused significant flight delays at Kennedy Airport and across the nation, though cancellation were avoided. Simultaneously, relations with China are showing signs of improvement as China confirmed an agreed framework that relaxes exports of rare earth minerals to the U.S. and removes some restrictions on American goods. South Africa is championing African priorities as it leads the G20. With the G20 Leaders Summit on the horizon, South Africa is questioning the United States about its non-attendance at some G20 gatherings. Even with domestic coalition challenges, the South African rand has seen positive movement. Experts have analyzed the key obstacles hindering South Africa's economic expansion. Business sentiment among South African commercial property professionals declined during the second quarter. Furthermore, a study identified the most favored fuel station brands among drivers in South Africa. Australia's stock market witnessed a seesaw trading session, with early gains eroded by declines in bank shares. The mining sector showed strength, but the broader market still fell. A legal challenge has been mounted against Saint-Gobain's TSR, with accusations of abusing its market dominance. All eyes are on a Perth-based explorer, now the AXE's leading stock performer. Dense stocks listed on the ASX have been booming, seeing yearly gains from 40% to 307%. Asian markets presented a mixed bag of performance, even as our stocks edged closer to record highs. Investor sentiment remained guarded, largely influenced by impending deadlines concerning us tariffs and lingering questions about the Federal Reserve's direction on monetary policy. Within the Asian currency landscape, the Taiwan dollar stood out, scaling to a 3-year peak against the US dollar. Taiwan's pet food industry, a major exporter to the United States, is navigating potential tariff-related hurdles that may lead some US importers to seek alternative suppliers. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index saw a minor dip as investors cashed in on profits after a period of market growth. Qatar has apparently decided against pursuing a potential investment in Rosneft's German assets. The Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have reportedly reached a consensus aimed at resolving a 3-decade-long conflict. Singapore is actively crafting a detailed blueprint for its upcoming urban expansion and development. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.